you folks here, and I think we will begin. So I'd like to start off by saying welcome everyone to our post-secondary education options in Vermont for youth with developmental disabilities workshop today. And with us today are Betsy Chiquette, the program manager at Vocational Rehabilitation, Brian Daig, a research assistant professor and program director of ThinkCollege Vermont at UVM and CDCI, Mark Pryor, Senior Manager for Project Hire at Howard Center Project Search, Deborah Baker Moody, Instructor at Project Search, Bennett Townley, Intern at Project Search, Chris Kennedy, Regional Director of College Steps, Patty Gannon, Associate Director of Global Campuses Foundation, Jared James, Director of Employment Services at Lincoln Street, and Jenny Masterson, Supported Employment Services Coordinator, Post-Secondary Education Consortium at the Developmental Disabilities Division. Next slide, please. So a little bit about us. Vermont Family Network has been serving families of children with special needs and disabilities and the professionals who serve them for more than 30 years. We are the federally designated Parent Training Information Center, the Family to Family Health Information Center, and the Vermont chapter of both Family Voices and Parent to Parent USA. All of our workshops, including previous ones, are recorded and can be watched on the VFN YouTube channel. The link is on our website, which is vermontfamilynetwork.org. Everyone who registered for today's workshop will receive a follow-up email with a link to this recording and some handouts that we'll be talking about later in the presentation. Today's presentation and workshop is being recorded, so please keep in mind, as you share information about your situation, this session will include live captions. And if you want to turn them off, just click on live transcript, then hide subtitle. If you're comfortable, you're welcome to turn on your camera. You can ask questions using the chat box that you'll see at the bottom of your screen. And there will be a place to share information and links to resources that you found helpful. They'll be in chat as well. We know that you all and all of us learn a lot from each other. So at this point, I'm excited to introduce all of our presenters, but most importantly, Jenny Masterson, who's going to talk a little bit about today's presentation. Thank you, Jenny.
Hi, everybody. Excuse me. Thank you. I'm just going to take a few minutes before the presenters begin to give you kind of the big overview of how all of these programs that are presenting today fit together. And I will say that they all collaborate very closely in what we call the Post-Secondary Education Consortium. So my role here over the next few minutes is just to help you understand how they're similar, but also how they're different in terms of service options for young people. So collectively, the post-secondary ed providers, VocRehab, and Developmental Disabilities Services Division all represent what we call the Post-Secondary Ed Consortium, which is part of the Developmental Services Post-Secondary Ed Initiative. So the providers that you're going to hear from today are either providing a college campus-based support service or a lifelong learning opportunity or a technical training career development opportunity. And also some provide independent living skill development options at one level or another. All of our programs today are geared for transition age youth, both in high school as well as out of high school and young adults. The first option that you're going to hear about will be from a few providers who represent what we call college support providers. And these are programs that help students to succeed at college on Vermont campuses. These services are available at 4 or 5 Vermont colleges, and these providers are College Steps, ThinkCollege at UVM, and the Succeed program hosted by the Howard Center. They each follow a very similar model. Some of the common characteristics that they offer are that students do a self-designed college plan. They all provide peer mentors who are college students to support the college student with the disability. And each has a campus-based coordinator who works with each student and also helps to develop up that peer mentor pool. They also all create internships that lead to employment at graduation. The second option is what we call lifelong learning and teaching. And this is an opportunity that's provided by an organization called Global Campus. Some of you may be familiar with Global Campus. And they're housed at various locations across the state. Global Campus facilitates student-run campuses in community venues like CCV and other venues out there in the community. At Global Campus, students select topics that they're interested in researching, and then they organize themselves, learn about their topic, and present to their peers and the community. I think that the hallmark of Global Campus is that it really embodies the student, empowers the student body to be learners and teachers and to run their own campuses through a very democratic process. The third option that you're going to hear about are organizations that provide business-hosted technical training. And these are 9-month-long technical training options provided through the Project Search organization that we have here in Vermont. Project Search exists at 3 different areas across the state, and the training is provided on site in hospital settings. And those hospitals are Dartmouth-Hitchcock Medical Center, Rutland Region Medical Center, and the UVM Medical Center. Project Search offers 3 internship rotations across various departments in the hospital. And again, job hires happen upon completion of the program, either at the host business or in the community. And then the fourth opportunity that you're going to hear about is independent living skills development options. And again, all of the programs that you hear from today do help to teach some of the independent living skills curriculum at one level or another. But the most intensely offered is part of the Howard Center Succeed program and their Avenue 7 program. And also we have College Steps at Castleton University, providing what we think of as a supported apartment program where students live for 2 years and learn transitional supported living skills. And then just to wrap up, I want to remind everybody that we have a pretty robust supported employment offering throughout the state. Every agency, designated agency and specialized service agency needs to be able to offer supported employment to people. And these supported employment programs interface very closely with all of the post-secondary ed programs. I do have a handout that I'll send out to Rachel to send on to you that shows you where those programs are located, the contact information, and that type of thing. So now I'm going to hand it over to Betsy Choquette, who's going to talk about VocRehab.
Thanks, Jenny. Hello, all. I'm Betsy Choquette from VocRehab. I'm here to talk about VR for just a few moments. As Jenny mentioned, you're going to hear about multiple programs today. And I just wanted to mention before we get started that VR is a longstanding partner of Developmental Services Disability, or DDSD, 40 plus years in the makings. And we have a very strong commitment from the director all the way down through our staff to post-secondary ed opportunities for youth in transition. And to help support youth in transition for each of these programs, we have transition counselors around the state, at least 2 in every district, that are there to help navigate as people are thinking about options. I think that's all I have. So just a reminder that VR can be a piece of that puzzle as youth are trying to determine what happens with transition. All right, and I will pass the baton to Brian. Is that right?
That's right. Hi, I'm Brian Daig. I'm the director of the ThinkCollege program. We're at the University of Vermont Center on Disability and Community Inclusion. This venture began in 2010. We received a 5-year federal grant from the U.S. Department of Education with the goal of establishing an inclusive program at a university for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities. The reason we got this grant is there were a number of programs like this around the country, and the government wanted to fund some demonstration projects. So we were one of 27 projects funded in 2010. They funded another 25 projects in 2015, and I believe another 25 projects in 2020. So it's a growing program throughout the country. I think there's over 200 programs in existence. And our charge was to set up a program that dealt with these 4 areas. So the first was academic enrichment, so that students would take typical classes at the University of Vermont with peer mentor support. We also looked at social and recreational activities, so our students would have the full college experience and be able to be involved in student clubs and different activities. We also looked at life skills and self-advocacy skills. We do not have a residential program at ThinkCollege, but students do work on independent living skills and self-advocacy skills. And then the final part is career skills and work experiences. So we try to set up their courses based on their career goals if we can. And usually the last semester, they will do a vocational internship based on their career goals. So you can move to the next slide. So it's a 2 to 3 year certificate program. Our students are continuing ed students. It's traditionally been 2 years, but now more and more students are opting to do a 3rd year just because the time goes by pretty quickly. Right now, we have 14 students that are enrolled in our program, and they are supported by about 30 mentors, because our mentors are really kind of the heart and soul of our program to truly be an inclusive part of the university. So that's been working extremely well using that peer mentor model. About 40 students have completed the certificate at this point. Throughout their tenure, they've had classes over 25 different academic departments and over 30 different vocational internship sites. And it has had an impact, both with the students and the families, but also within our college and university. Our program has been become pretty popular and embraced, and as far as the mentor is concerned, they get great experience as students. About half of our mentors are social service or education majors, but the other half are not. We've had about 150 mentors work in our program since we've started. And when students finish the program, we do help them find employment. Right now, we've about a 90% employment rate of our graduates. And we do contribute to the National Coordinating Center that still does research and evaluation. And move it on to Chris.
As Brian mentioned, the TIPSID grants that ThinkCollege emerged from our first campus, Johnson, was in partnership with Brian and the CDCI and that original grant. So we've largely emerged out of that same initiative, and we've grown beyond Johnson State College, well now NVU Johnson, to NVU Linden, Castleton University, and other campuses as well. But those are 4 campuses in the state. As you can see, we work on those same 4 areas, and I think you'll see that across most of our programs. Academics, but recognizing that while we might think in our head of college being about college classes and the grades we get in those classes, making a successful transition to adulthood and utilizing campus for all of our goals requires going well beyond the academic realm. So we, like Brian, are encouraging students to get involved in clubs, social groups, intramurals, and just integrate themselves into that culture. Why our programs use those peer mentors. Those are paid and trained staff. We want students to access natural support. So our mentors are trained in all these programs to understand we want to connect individuals to the resources that are available in that environment already and get comfortable with that, whether that's a classmate, a professor, academic support services on campus, tutoring. We don't just want to be kind of insulated. We want to make sure we're building bridges and helping students become more independent and advocating for themselves and accessing that stuff on campus. Independent living, students do everything from that self-advocacy piece to personal finances to I want to get a job, save for my first car, speak up for myself more often, balance work, life, family, all that kind of stuff. And then finally, the internships that we're building on campus and in the community for like a meaningful transition to paid employment. Eligibility is pretty broad. Both Brian and our grant initially was a grant for individuals with intellectual disabilities. And we've since broadened to really a documentation of a social community or communication or learning disability. The students need to be on board. So not just everybody around them thinks this is a good idea. They need to be invested in the program because it is an adult learning college-based program. So we need them to be invested, setting their own goals, and directing what the supports look like. And then finally, just that they have aspirations to be more independent and autonomous in their living and their vocational outcomes, so that they're not just viewing this as a fun college experience, but really invested in this is a transition to greater levels of independence and better employment outcomes. Our students generally are coming 2 or 3 days a week, and that might be around the days that they have classes. So most classes will run Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday. This is a schedule of a student that might come Monday, Wednesday, and Friday to get their 15 hours support. For some students, transportation is an issue, so they want to get 2 full days in on the days they have classes. Each of these different colors is a different mentor. They're going to have a specific mentor for their social stuff because it's somebody that shares common interests with them, a different mentor for their class and homework supports and study time. Ideally, somebody that has experience in that content or in that major. Maybe somebody else as a workout buddy, somebody else to do some of our independent living skills. So they'll work with a variety of mentors throughout the day. And all of our programs, we have really good communication between our mentors and our on-campus staff, our coordinators. Outcomes, again, just meaningful careers, autonomy after graduation. So we're really emphasizing, self-advocacy, pre-employment skills, and independent living skills as a part of our services. So that will bring us to Project Search, and I think Jared has that first slide.
Yes, throwing it over to me. Thanks, Chris. Project Search, a little Cliff Note version of Project Search history, began in 1996, based out of the Cincinnati Children's Hospital, and it was a collaboration between the host business, which was Cincinnati Children's Hospital, and a local educational program which targeted how to utilize individuals who were being sort of served in the emergency room or at the hospital as ways to fill entry-level positions to increase their marketable skills for post-graduation. So there was a lot of kind of brainstorming in that initial program, and it started as one site, which was Cincinnati Children's Hospital, and has grown to pretty much a global program across the world, not just in the United States. So that's sort of the Cliff Note version of Project Search historical presence. And we have 3 sites, as Jenny Masterson mentioned earlier. We have 3 sites in Vermont. Our site, which is at Dartmouth Hitchcock, is sort of a dual site. We are a Vermont program, but we are also able to serve individuals in New Hampshire as well. So we are part of the Vermont program, but we are sort of a dual state program as well. So the eligibility criteria, all 3 Vermont sites are considered hybrids. And what that means is we are all able to take tuition students in from a local school, or if someone missed that opportunity through school, whether it be the program wasn't around when they graduated or it wasn't for them during their transition process out of school, they would be able to attend the program if they had financial backing, even if they've graduated. So yes, it's a post-secondary program, but we all sort of are open to serving young adults between 18 and 26, but actually all programs have opened up their age bracket to serve individuals older than 26. The program focus is for serving young adults with a variety of developmental disabilities. These interns must have the ability to work with independents once they understand their job tasks or their internship sites. Essentially, we will go in and build the natural support. As I believe I heard Brian Daig mention earlier with his call, and Chris Kennedy as well, talk about natural supports. So they're not paid to work with them. We will go in and sort of develop who might be their point person if they have a question. So they'll learn their job tasks, they'll learn the emergency protocol should something occur that they need help with, because they're not always there. And essentially 75% of the individuals that attend Project Search must be eligible for adult services upon graduation. That doesn't mean that some years it's a different figure, but for the most part, it is geared for the long-term supports after graduation. So I'm going to send this off to the next person, I believe is Jess.
Great. Thanks, Jared. So I work with the Rutland Regional Project Search team. And one of the central components of Project Search is the host business that each of these programs are located in. Project Search is a business-led program. So what that means is that each intern that's participating in the program is expected to follow the rules of the hospital. There is dress code that we also follow. The idea, excuse me, is that folks are really immersed in the business while they're learning the job skills and tasks that they're going to take with them after they leave the program. Within each business, there is a business liaison who's an employee of the business. And we work very, very closely with the business liaisons to ensure that there is that continuity of, yes, they're Project Search interns, but they are also very much considered part of the hospital or the host business that the program is located in. So there's a great deal of collaboration that happens between not just the host business, but also the other partners. As Betsy mentioned earlier, VR is immersed in all of the post-secondary options that are out there. So we work very closely with vocational rehabilitation, as well as all the area schools that are served by the specific designated agencies. Again, we work closely with Jenny at DDSD to keep these programs going and flourishing. And then, of course, the most important part is working with families. The programs don't exist without families being part of it. So that's kind of the short version of all the different collaborations that are taking place. And then I have the next slide too. So basically the program is our 3 unpaid 10-week internships. The interns will spend roughly half to 3/4 of their day in their internships, depending on how they're structured. And the internships vary. We've got folks at Rutland Regional, we have folks in medical coding department, folks working in like the maintenance department, learning to tear down meeting rooms or set them up. We have folks in linens that are learning skills like restocking and making sure that certain numbers of linens are where they need to be. And these are all transferable skills that they'll be able to take with them when they graduate the program and seek paid full-time employment. In addition to the internships, there's also a school component that is roughly an hour in the morning or an hour in the afternoon, where the curriculum is given by Project Search, and they cover different things like financial literacy, health and wellness, how to be a good team player and a good employee, as well as self-advocacy. So as you can see, that it tries to cover a little bit of each piece that, again, will be a transferable skill and level of knowledge that follows them throughout adulthood. And now I'm going to pass it over to Karen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Hussey, and I'm with Howard Center, and we're a partner with the UVM MC project search. And so the expected outcomes for interns coming into the program may look a little bit different than some of the employment outcomes for students that are in high school. With interns being immersed into the business site and spending their final year of high school at the business site, they're really building stamina. They're really getting an understanding of what work expectations are. So the expectation as the interns are starting to look for employment is that they will work a minimum of 16 hours per week as they look to leave the program. It follows a fidelity model of the national project search, and it's an outcome that we really all strive to help the interns meet. And I think we've been pretty successful with that. I want to just touch upon a little bit about what the staffing looks like at each project search site. Just mentioned that there's a classroom component of project search, and each site has an instructor who's responsible for the curriculum and the classroom portion. And while each site might look a little bit different in terms of what the staffing looks like, it's based on numbers of interns that are enrolled. And at the UVM MC site, we have 6 interns this year, and we have what we call 2 career coaches at the site working with them, helping them in their internships. So as Jared mentioned earlier, we don't have the ability to provide the one-on-one support, and interns need to work toward independence in their internships, and a lot of that is tied to the staffing inabilities to provide those additional supports. Before we go to Succeed, I just want to introduce and pass the baton to Deb Baker-Moody, who's our instructor at UVM MC. Is Deb still with us?
She is. I think they're
Deb,
There
you're
we go.
muted.
trying to get their audio.
There we go. Hi, I'm Deb Baker-Moody. I'm the instructor for Project Search at UVM MC. Our program began at the Sports and Fitness Edge back in 2016. We're in our 4th year at the University of Vermont Medical Center, and we've had 46 interns complete the program at this point. And as Karen said, we have 6 enrolled this year. And I'm going to turn it over to Bennett Townley, who's one of our current interns.
Hey folks, my name is Bennett Townley, and I'm currently in the Project Search program this year. The program offers 3 unpaid internships at the hospital in different departments. Some of the departments are like mini laundry, family and patient relations, nursing sets and CSR, Kanban cart distribution, Baird 6, which is an inpatient unit, and pump rounding. I have completed my first internship, which was in CSR doing nursing sets. And I've started my 2nd week in my 2nd internship, which is pump rounding. Nursing sets was a very interesting but very technical internship that involved multiple tasks. Some of the tasks I did in CSR included stocking nursing sets for medical procedures and surgeries, checking expiration dates in the space savers, replenishing out of date or missing supplies in the sets, scanning the sets into a database, ordering disposable supplies that are out of stock, such as a lumbar puncture tray, or expedite reusable tools. There were things I liked about the nursing sets and things I found frustrating. Things I liked were being able to do data entry. I used the computer and iPad, and seeing all of the medical equipment and actually knowing what a lot of it is. Things that frustrated me included some of the behaviors from the other coworkers. The workspace was very tiny, and things weren't always clearly labeled or not labeled at all sometimes. My second internship, pump rounding, is really interesting since I get to go all around the medical center and see lots of electronic equipment like ventilators, IV pumps, continuous renal replacement therapy machines, and ultrasounds. I also enjoy the exercise of walking and going over my goal of 8,000 steps each weekday. My task is to go around the hospital, pick up the pumps from the soil utility room using gloves, and then I go out down to decontam to sterilize the pumps. To sterilize, I dress up like a surgeon in a gown, face mask, surgical gloves, hairnet, and booties to cover my shoes. After suiting up, I put the dirty pumps on the counter and wipe down the cart so it is clean. I then put on 2 green covers to protect the electronic connectors on the pump from the bleach as I wipe them down with an industrial strength bleach wipe. It is like a wipe I used to wipe my toilet when I clean my bedroom or bathroom on Saturdays, but much stronger. I do find the PPE very hot and uncomfortable, and I don't like the smell of the bleach or the adhesive remover that helps remove the sterilized labels, as they can smell very strong. The face shield also fogs up sometimes, which is frustrating and makes it hard to focus. Overall, I really enjoy Project Search since I'm out of the house nearly every day and I get to be out in the community and learning. I also enjoy learning new skills for independent living, like healthy eating, mindfulness, budgeting, and relationships. The day starts at 8:30 with an hour of training. At 9:30, our group either takes the bus or walks up to the hospital to their internships. We work from 10 to 12, have lunch from 12 to 12:30, and then work again from 12:30 to 2. At 2, we walk back down to the classroom and do either more training or an activity from about 2:30 to 3. And then we have to use our own transportation to get back home. Could be a bus, a parent, or a caretaker.
Excellent. Thank you, Bennett.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Pryor. I'm Senior Manager with the Succeed program at Howard Center. And Succeed opened in the fall of 2008. And we focus on 4 central program components, which are education, career development, campus life, and residential/independent living. All of our students are required to complete a high school experience and be between the ages of 18 and 25. They also need to be residents of the state of Vermont. They do not need to be residents of our county, Chittenden County. We have students from all over the state, but they do need to be Vermonters and meet diagnostic criteria for Medicaid waiver and system of care funding. We also are really careful when we're screening individuals for Succeed to have somebody joining the program who already has a certain level of independence. Our students have quite a bit of freedom in the Burlington community, and so we want to make sure that individuals can keep themselves and others safe while spending time on campus at the University of Vermont and in the downtown Burlington area. We are a full year program, even though we follow the University of Vermont's semester schedule in the fall and spring. We have our own summer semester, and students are typically staying with us between 2 and 3 years. And then most importantly, Succeed is voluntary. And I think, as Chris mentioned with college steps earlier, Succeed is definitely really wanting to have students who really want to be here, not necessarily someone whose parents really want them to be here. It really helps to have that motivating piece when we have someone come into the program. So there's just a couple of photos here we can go through as I'm talking. These are of our residential locations. We have 2 houses right in downtown Burlington, a couple blocks from Church Street, and just down the hill from the University of Vermont. We have a total of 14 students living between 2 residential sites. These photos are of our, what we call our main houses. They are within a couple of blocks from each other, just off of Pearl Street in Burlington. And this is where 4 or 5 students would be living. We do have an RA on staff who stays overnight for supports when our daytime staff aren't there. We also have back apartment models at each residential location for students who have progressed with their independent living skills and are ready for that next step. So in their 2 or 3 years of the program, they would have experience in the main house and the back apartment. We really focus on a guidance philosophy, dignity of risk, allowing our students to, have a college experience with, taking some of those, maybe it's an academic risk of, enrolling in a class that might be a reach academically for them, but going for it and having that experience and learning from it. We really try to operate from that standpoint. All of our students take at least 1 college level course each fall and spring semester. Oftentimes that's at the Community College of Vermont campus in Winooski, but sometimes that's also at the University of Vermont. All of our students have University of Vermont student IDs, even if they're not paying UVM students. So they have access to the social opportunities happening at the Davis Center and elsewhere throughout campus. And I think that is, that's probably good, Chris. Thank you. Who do we have next?
Hi, I'm
Patty?
Patty Gannon. I'm Patty Gannon from Global Campuses. We have a program that supports adults with differing abilities to come together and create their own learning environments. As Jenny had mentioned previously, participants are the faculty, then the administrators and scholars at their campuses. So 20 years ago, when we first started in the Northeast Kingdom, we were invited there and we asked consumers, is this something that you'd like to have come to your community? And they said yes. And ever since then, we've grown, and we now have 11 campuses throughout Vermont, including 1 in New Hampshire in the Lebanon area. So we go into communities and ask if this is something that they would be interested in taking part in. So it's very much participant driven. Global campuses are open to students of all abilities. There's no entrance criteria. We also are lifelong learning. So a lot of these post-secondary ed opportunities will see participants who actually started at Global Campus, they then enter one of these other programs or offerings, then they come back and share what they learned and what they were doing, because we have folks that have been with us for, over 15 years. So nobody ever really has to graduate from Global Campus because we are really more certificate driven. Every semester, a participant receives a certificate, as you'll see. Student participants generally meet once a week for about 2 hours. So people, most participants have jobs, or a good percent of them do, and they just work, they work our campuses into their schedules, which works out great. A key outcome for GC participants is by exploring new interests and using this as a tool for learning and teaching to others. Participants demonstrate to themselves personal and professional growth. And we will accept transition students as well. We go into the high schools and kind of give some information, and they're welcome to join us. We have some 17-plus-year-olds that have been taken part in certain campuses throughout Vermont. Global Campus faculty member here is teaching at VINS, and she actually is a tour guide there, a volunteer, and so she chose to teach one of her classes to her peers at VINS, where she actually volunteers. Here's the certificate day that I was mentioning. At the beginning of each semester, participants decide on the courses they plan. Courses are topical, timely, and relevant. Courses connect participants to new material and to their communities. Participants receive a certificate at the end of each semester, and some participants will have, 20-plus certificates in their binders when they come to their certificate day to show what they've done. We go into each community of the 11 that we're currently in, and participants are encouraged to take part in our in community service outreach that they choose. They kind of go out and make the connection and say, hey, let's do this semester. And so that becomes a community service, and they're out in the community doing this. Here as well, there are some folks out in the Northeast Kingdom that took part in cleaning up a park. So they really choose what type of community service they'd like to do. We try to make this something every semester that they take part in, as well as the classes that they teach and attend. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Patty. I know we want to save plenty of time for questions, so I just want to move through the next couple of slides pretty quickly. I know a question that always comes up for all of our programs is funding. I just want, this slide's kind of important for those that are doing, Succeed, ThinkCollege, College Steps. It's important to understand that there's the direct support fees that, often come from Medicaid waivers or partnerships with high schools to support the program costs. Students typically do have separate tuition costs as any other college student would. But that doesn't mean that needs to be a barrier for families. So on the next slide, we're going to see, here's the direct support fees. A lot of students can use their home and community-based support waivers to fund this post-high school. Even if they don't hold the waiver, there's grants available to the individual agencies that we partner with, as well as the state DDSD holds some grants and funding that might allow a student to access these programs, even if they were not eligible for a Medicaid waiver for some of those criteria, but they were eligible for adult services. We partner with high schools. Sometimes we have dual enrollment or students who have maxed out their high school course load, but are continuing to work on their transition goals as a part of their IEP. So we can partner with those teams and hold that kind of contract with the high school. And there's other supplemental ways that people can privately pay if that's an option they want to explore, but usually it's unnecessary. So the tuition expenses is usually where people start worrying about finances. You can see there's a lot of options listed here. Not every option is going to be available to everyone. You don't have to memorize these, but I just want it to be apparent that there's lots of ways, especially for students that are taking a class, maybe 2 classes a semester. There's VSAC enhancement grants, which are kind of 9-degree grants. Our partnerships with DVRs sometimes make students eligible for up to a certain amount of unmet need. So whether the costs aren't covered through VSAC or family's ability to pay, there's PASS plans, ABLE accounts, dual enrollment through the high school. Sometimes you can take audits, classes as an audit. If you're making a transition to employment, that can reduce your tuition costs. So you don't need to learn all of this. All of our programs work really closely with all the partnering agencies and high schools. We want to start working on this stuff early. So if you reach out to one of us or have one of us speak on behalf of the consortium, we can start doing that work to get the funding in order. Usually there's lots of options for making that happen, and we don't want families to get overwhelmed by it because it can be confusing, but we've been through it with so many students. It's just about getting connected and letting us kind of walk you through that process in partnership with the other agencies. Our big goals, and thank you to Vermont Family Network, is just getting the word out about all our programs. Vermont's a leader in this area. We've received some awards for the amount of options and the amount of access our students have to post-secondary options, whether they're in hospitals and workplaces, in campus or global campus, kind of in the community. So we all work really closely and advocate for each other's programs and refer students that are a better fit for another program to each other. Can quickly see some of our outcome data. Last year, we had a dip in our employment rate, what I think was expected from a pandemic. We're usually right around 93% employment rates as the average for all of our programs. And our average wage for all of our programs is above minimum wage. So we're really trying to target meaningful internships that can transition to paid employment at something that's not a token job, at something that's really what that student excels at, what they have strengths in. And that's a lot of the work we do. So kind of brings us, I mentioned, and I don't know if we have time to go into it too much, but Brian Dagg nominated our consortium for an international Zero Project award. Brian, you want to take just a second to explain this, and then we'll jump to the Q&A?
Yeah, the Zero Project is an international organization with the goal of eliminating barriers, so zero barriers to people with disabilities around the world. Each year they hold a conference with a different topic. Last year it was employment, and we did nominate our post-secondary consortium for a policy award, and we were awarded a policy award and recognized by the International Zero Project. So it's pretty exciting.
So I'll kind of hand it over to our moderators again. They did send us some questions that attendees put in ahead of this webinar. So maybe we can address some of those and also other questions that some of you have. So I'm not sure who will moderate this section. Happy to do it.
We currently don't have a lot of new questions in the chat box, so I'll field one, and then we can go to the questions that were sent in, and I'll let you know if other questions come in. This is for anyone who would like to answer. Are there any really amazing success stories that any one of you would like to talk about as far as some of the outcomes that stand out in your mind? And any one of you can answer that from any one of the programs.
I can jump in. This is Brian Dagg with the ThinkCollege program. We did have a student that was, he's interested in library sciences. He took all 4 library science courses that were offered at UVM. And there was also a special ed international program that was offered. So during spring break, a group of students went over to England and spent some time at a elementary school. And he was part of that class, and he went to England for the spring break, and he worked on renovating their library. So that was pretty exciting that one of our students was able to have an experience abroad.
That's great. That's great. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think some of our highlights are, you know, a lot of the transition to employment, everything from celebrating that student who was not motivated to work, did not come up from a family that had a culture of work, and over 2 years working really closely with them, doing an on-campus internship with their food provider, them wanting to, you know, seeing some motivation towards work, doing the internship, getting offered a job, and now as a full-time benefited, you know, employee there. So no jobs big, no jobs small. Work has value, and we also have students, you know, all over the state, everywhere from somebody who's currently getting commissioned to do a can for The Alchemist to make Hetty Topper, and they're going to do one of their can graphic designs for the release that they're going to do during Disability Awareness Month, and everything in between.
That's great. That's great. So I do see there is a question in here. Does tuition remission apply?
I'm curious if that's referring to like the high school students. So high school students, if their counselor refers them for dual enrollment, then their cost of a class for up to 2 semesters, I believe, is covered through like the state's dual enrollment process, which I think is similar for early college students that are knocking out some credits while they're still enrolled in high school. As far as tuition for graduates, that could be covered through the VSAC non-degree grant, which is now referred to as the enhancement grant. If they're working towards a degree, VSAC has some awards for that as well. There's community scholarships. So high schools would not pay the tuition cost.
There is some clarification from the question that was posed. What if the parent is an employee of the college?
Yeah, most of the colleges, as I'm aware, if you are a full-time employee there, staff, faculty, or otherwise, your immediate family can go at reduced or free cost. So it's whatever it's written in their contract, but we've had students who have accessed that before, for sure.
That's great. Thank you.
As far as the University of Vermont, though, that does not apply because they have to be a full-time matriculated student to get remitted tuition. So our students have not been eligible for that.
Okay. Thank you. So now I think we'll go to some of the questions. And perhaps, Chris, you want to take one, operation status updates. Many impacts of COVID are out of our control. What should those who are transitioning know to expect?
To be flexible as things change. I think we all went through kind of a shutdown period. Some of the residential programs had to navigate that a little more carefully. We operated virtually and are finding that some students benefit from like a hybrid, part virtual, part in-person model. And some students in other parts of the state that can't commute to some of these programs have access through virtual programming now. I think you should expect, as far as the campus-based ones, to wear a mask and to respect the boundaries of others and opinions of others around their comfort. But we're operating in person. Our mentors are all vaccinated on our campuses, and it's been a lot, but I think we're all back up to speed.
Great, thank you. Someone posted, how can we trigger job coaching supports after graduation if our adult child graduated without a job due to various factors?
Jenny, do you want to field that one?
Sure. What was the last sentence? Due to their what?
Due to various factors. How can we trigger job coaching supports after graduation if our adult child graduated without a job due to various factors?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the first thing that is important to know is if there are any community supports that have been allocated to any young people coming out of school, those can just as easily be used for supported employment. That might be difficult for some people that are doing sort of essential and urgent activities using community support, but it's important for all families to know that at any time you can sit down with your case manager and team and say, you know, we want to swap those over into employment supports. And then the critical question becomes, who on the team is going to take the lead in helping the person to find the job? So that's one thing that's really, really important, and that gets overlooked quite a bit. The other thing that's really important to know is that the system of care funding criteria for employment is good until a person turns 26. So if a person really wants to work, it would be very, very important to get that person connected with the supported employment team in the agency, to get the case manager on board advocating for employment, and to figure out a way to provide job development. As soon as the person has a job offer, then the agency can go ahead and advocate for whatever funding might be needed to learn that job and to retain that job over time, because that would be a system of care funding priority.
Thank you, Jenny. Let's see, another one is, can these colleges and universities be accessible for adults and students with disabilities within rural communities? I'll let you all fight over that question.
I think, not to speak for everyone, I think it's long been a challenge, and I think one of the silver linings of the last year is we've gotten creative in how to meet students virtually, but that doesn't work for everyone. I know that the state and the local agencies are really dedicated to students. We have some students that travel quite a bit, well over an hour, and so sometimes we have to schedule them accordingly. Maybe they do one really long day on campus and get some other programming and internships in their own community or virtually to supplement that. I know we've worked with Jenny closely on some students who the drive is just too much, and doing it multiple times a week is too much. So we've looked at, can we get almost respite kind of boarding houses, so the student can maybe have a Tuesday and Thursday schedule, arrive there Tuesday during the day, and then stay with that shared living provider or that respite provider for 2 nights, return home on Thursday after classes. there's lots of ways to get creative with it, and we're all willing to be really flexible, and the state's very supportive of these. So individual circumstances are conversations we want to have and find how we can make some of these programs accessible. I know Mark's program has long been a leader in this, as their residential environment allows for anyone from around the state transitioning out of high school to come have this independent living experience, access college in the Burlington area. Sometimes they transition to living in the Burlington area, and his program has an excellent support in making sure they can get affordable housing vouchers, stuff like that, and have a successful transition to living independently in Burlington or with necessary supports. And some students will transition back to their hometown or their home area. And it's similar for our small residential program at Castleton. Students can, anywhere from around the state can transfer there. We only have 2 spots in that program. But we have students from all over the state that are coming down there to do their 2 years. And largely for that campus, they do transition back to their home agency and their home. And when we're setting up internships, we want to be mindful of that. Are they going to be here long term, or do we need to look at this transition into the setting that they're coming from?
Yeah, and although Global Campuses isn't your traditional, residential program, we actually do have many campuses in rural communities. So we do, students would have access to that program in places like Hardwick, or, we have lots of places like St. Johnsbury and Newport, and different locations throughout Vermont that are in more rural areas. So that's also something that could be explored.
Thank you, Patty. Thank you, Chris. So there is probably 2 more questions. Someone wrote, I'm looking for post-secondary trade schools for a son who graduates this year with an emphasis in culinary arts. How would any of these programs address a situation like that?
I could take a quick stab at that. We have had a number of students in the Succeed program participate in the, I think it's is it Campus Community Kitchen or Community Kitchen Academy? I always forget the acronym. But we say that it's a requirement in Succeed to have students take at least one college level course at an area school. But we've learned over the years that some flexibility within that has been very beneficial for our students, whether that's going towards something like the trades. We have an individual right now who's actually taking a welding course, and I believe that's offered at CVU. So we like to be really creative. There was obviously a period of time where there were limited post-secondary ed classes being held in person because of COVID. And so that has forced us to be extremely creative. So there are other options in the community, especially for us having the benefit of being in Burlington. We are definitely looking for those opportunities outside of the campus-based learning.
So this is probably the last question. I know it's not necessarily part of this consortium, but there's a question about what is Avenue 7?
Sure, thank you. So really quickly, the best way to explain Avenue 7 is to think about what was mentioned in the slides about Succeed and removing the academic piece. So Avenue 7 really was kind of birthed out of having a huge interest and response in Succeed when it first opened in 2008. There were lots of families and students looking for opportunities after high school to help somebody navigate a college experience, but also the independent living piece was huge and very high priority for families. And so what happened was we were getting a lot of interest, a lot of applicants, and oftentimes that academic piece was kind of like, oh, I'll suck it up and do that, but I really want these 2 components, or just the independent living piece of Succeed. And what we found over time is that because it is academically driven program, we really need investment in that component for Succeed to function as well as it can for the student. So Avenue 7 kind of came out of that, of, well, you know, there's this whole other interested population who might not want the school piece and want to focus on independent living and vocation. And so it's basically a response to that. And so it's a smaller program, one location for a maximum of 6 students, but similar age ranges, kind of post-high school transition age.
Thank you, Mark. So at this point, we don't have any other questions, and I'd like to take the time to thank each and every one of you for participating in this really informative workshop and webinar today. I do want to let people know that there's a link to an evaluation in the chat. If folks could please take a few minutes to complete it so we can make improvements and fulfill our grant requirements. Everyone who registered for today's workshop will receive an email with the link to the recording. So again, please take a few minutes to fulfill, to fill out the survey and help us fulfill our grant requirements. The contact information is up on the screen about Vermont Family Network, as well as the link. Our phone number is 802-876-5315. Our email is info@vtfn.org, and the VFN website is www.vermontfamilynetwork.org. And we also want folks to know that we have a closed Facebook page for Vermont families of children with special needs. And I'd also like to put a plug in for 2 transition resources at the Vermont Family Network. One is the Transition Toolkit for Youth with Disabilities, which I would invite people to take a look at. And there's also a hard copy of a booklet that we were very grateful the Agency of Education helped fund, a printed booklet. We have many copies in our office. It's the Family Guide to Transition Services in Vermont. So again, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for a wonderful presentation and absolutely fantastic information. So thank you, everyone, and hope to see you all soon. Thank you.